views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
All right, coming up on this edition of Today's Verdict, members of our Bronx community often seek legal help but do not know where to turn and who to trust. Well, don't worry. Today we'll learn all the resources the Bronx County Bar Association has to offer. Next, lawsuit loans are advertised on all of the local airwaves, but are the lenders being fair? Are you being led down the wrong path? And how do they get away with such a high interest rate? It's Lawsuit Lending 101. And we have you covered. As you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's Verdict starts right now. All right, hello and welcome to Today's Verdict, the live and interactive show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Well, Today's Verdict is always encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure to tweet us at Today's Verdict and hashtag Ask Today's Verdict if you have a question. Also, make sure to like us and follow us on Facebook at Today's Verdict and check us out at bronxnet.tv. The public is often seeking secure legal representation in their civil, criminal, or even administrative proceedings. Well, the Bronx County Bar Association is a resource for all in the Bronx community, including practicing attorneys. Well, joining us today is a new president of the Bronx County Bar Association, Tina Wells. Tina, thanks so much for being here. You know, it's been a long road trying to get all the different presidents here from the different bar associations. Finally have you here. Before we get into the Bronx County Bar Association, let's talk a little about you and kind of law you practice, who you were before becoming president of the organization.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I was thinking about this the other day, how long I've been practicing, and it's been 22, almost 23 years, which is a scary prospect. I first started doing defense work. All of my background has been in some type of personal injury, medical malpractice, all of that kind of genre. And I first started doing defense, so that was a long, long time ago. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then switched over to the plaintiff side after that.
And I know much of your work has been in the Bronx County Courthouse. I see you there often, which leads us really to the Bar Association, which is really a great resource and, you know, helps so many different people in so many ways. Let's tell the viewers a little bit about the organization and what they do, if you could.
Well, our organization is made up, obviously, of the lawyers who are generally practice in the Bronx, and we try to work with the court system, the bench and the bar try to work together collectively to see how we can help the courthouse run more efficiently and effectively and see how things can get done. We also offer some resources for the public for a nominal fee. People can come inside to look for referrals for lawyers.
So let's talk about that. So somebody is looking for an attorney. They can't seem to find somebody in the community or somebody they can trust. How does it work? They walk through the doors and they fill something out? Like, what's the mechanism there?
They come into the Bar Association on the first floor, room 124. They come inside and they will speak to Nareda, who's the one that runs our referral system, and they will fill out a sheet. They'll sit down and they'll talk to her. They'll tell her a little bit about what they're there for. Again, it's a nominal fee, and she will listen to what they have to say, and then she will refer them to someone who does that kind of work.
And do the attorneys usually meet them at the Bar Association? Does the person go into the attorney's office or
Nope,
something
they
else?
come right into the Bar Association, and generally it happens right then and there. She will either have someone actually in the Bar Association, or a phone call will be made, or they'll make a meeting. But it generally happens inside the Bar Association.
And just to be clear, is this just civil accident? Is it criminal?
It can be anything.
It can be anything.
It can be anything. And if we can't find someone or we don't have someone, Nareda can give her some information as to where she could, or he or she could go for. But it's generally things that are common that happen in our court system, whether it's family, criminal, or civil. And they have a consultation with the lawyer, and then from there they can decide if they want to hire that lawyer. They don't have to. There's no obligation. There's no.
And you don't follow that attorney or manage the litigation, or once you set them up with an attorney and the person likes the attorney, it's up to them at that point.
Completely up to them.
All
or
right.
they can go for another consultation. They can try someone else out. They can do whatever they want to do. There's no obligation one way or another on either side.
Okay, let's skip a little bit to the lawyers, all right, because I know you're putting on so many different programs. One particular program that I like is the continuing legal education programs. I know you've been in charge of that in the past. Talk to me a little bit about those programs, because it's so important for especially young attorneys to really stay up on the law as they move ahead in the field. Tell me what you offer, what the Bronx County Bar usually offers in terms of CLE credit.
So we're still a little old school. We still do CLEs inside the courthouse. We still do it face-to-face. We don't do them online. We still bring the presenters right into the courtroom. And we offer all sorts of different sorts of things, whether it's skills, private practice, ethics. The continuing legal education, as you know, you have to have 24 credits, and the 24 now you have to have 25 credits, I believe. But you have to have a variety of credits, and it includes ethics, skills, practice, and now diversity. So you have to have a variety of those credits every 2 years, and so we offer all of that.
And very quickly, against the diversity, because this is new to me.
Yes.
What exactly is that?
So
that requirement?
That requirement is it's 1 credit,
Okay.
and it just got put into effect as of September of this past year. And you have to have 1 credit, and it can be anything. It can be diversity in terms of what happens in private practice, in the courtroom. It can be anything, sexual harassment. It can cover a wide topic.
Now, the programs, they're for not just civil, criminal, and attorneys for all over the city. Am I correct? You don't have to be a Bronx County. You have to be a member of the Bronx County Bar.
You don't have to be a
No,
member.
you don't have to be a
No,
member.
we have, you can be a non-member, you can be a member. We have classes inside the civil court building, and then the criminal court building does a whole separate set of classes. And then there's even some in family court as well.
Okay, I'm sure you're going to leave your mark on the organization during the year. What other initiatives or things are you putting forth this year that you're proud of to be sponsoring and getting things moving, something different that maybe hasn't been done so much before?
Well, we are working on a couple of different things. One of the things we did start last year, but we're trying to promulgate and we're trying to move forward, is bringing in new and young members. So we have a new member committee that is really working on trying to bring and freshen up the membership and trying to get the young and energetic
and
kids
how are you
in
doing
there.
that? What kind of
So there's been a variety of different programs. We've had happy hours. We've had a new member breakfasts. They did a Yankee game where we offered networking opportunities between the bench and the bar, as well as court personnel, because it's good to know who's in the building. I've also started a Women's Alliance Committee, which is in its infancy stages. And
well, that sounds very interesting. Tell us a little about that.
so we just began that as of September and October, but our first program, which was wonderful, was in conjunction with the Gender Fairness Committee, was a breast cancer awareness panel that we did in October, and we had a doctor and 2 breast cancer survivors, and we did a panel discussion, and it was moving, it was informative, it was just it was so relevant at the time. And we are also going to be putting together a sexual harassment program, which in this day and age is relevant. And
Absolutely.
I just feel like the Women's Alliance Committee is, it's good to provide support, networking, and it's a whole that I feel like
Certainly
we need.
in this time, it's a very, very important thing to
Yes,
have.
absolutely.
And the Bronx County Bar does such great work. They, in terms of their holiday toy drive and different things that they do.
Yes.
I mean, it's just they're so involved with the community.
Speaking of that,
Yes, tell us, please.
we are trying to. Last year, we did a lot with the relief efforts that you spoke to Dan Cassidy about
did.
when we
He
were
was on here before.
Yes, and so now I'm trying to bring some more community outreach closer to home. So we're going to be working on doing some of that. And the toy drive is one of them. And then we are also partnering with one of the women in the courthouse. She wanted to do a food drive for a local food bank that is close to her. So we are doing that for the holidays as well. And we're going to try to get that up and running. So I'm trying to bring a little bit more sort of closer home community efforts. Not that we can't do something more global, but also to bring it to the Bronx.
First of all, where is the Bronx County Bar Association? Just if somebody wants to go get there and knows where to go.
851 Grand Concourse in the Supreme Court building.
And most importantly, where do we find you? If somebody wants to reach out to you and they may have a personal injury issue, medical malpractice issue, where do they reach Tina Wells?
We are at, well, I work for Troman, Glazer, and Lichtman, so they can reach me there they can either use our website, which is www.tgllaw.com. They can call us, 212-750-1200, and they can get a hold of me at the Bronx Bar Association as well.
Listen, good luck this year. It's a big year for you. And you're going to come back maybe in 6 months before the summer, see how the progress goes,
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we have to take a quick break, but don't worry, we'll be back with more Today's Verdict right after this.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund breeding.
No.
Let me try. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out words.
Playing world music.
What?
I give up.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet us at Today's Verdict. Well, millions of companies are often looking to lend money to injured parties who are waiting for their lawsuits to resolve. These funders make a lot of promises that seem to have good intentions, but in the end may make things tougher when it comes to ending the litigation. Well, we'll learn more about the truth on lawsuit lending with Tom Stebbins. Tom, welcome back. It's been
Good
a
to be
while.
back, David.
Every time you come and then you you leave. I get a lot of debate afterwards, so it's always nice to have you here. The Plato's Bar always likes to hear what you have to say.
They do.
Yes, they do.
I didn't get their Christmas card
No,
yet
but
this
you
year,
know
but
what?
it's
Christmas
coming.
isn't here
I'm
yet,
sure.
so
I'm
you
sure
may
it's
be
coming.
getting it. This topic is something that a lot of people want to discuss,
Yep.
the lending of money to those who have a lawsuit. Why don't you start us a little bit from the beginning and tell us a little bit how it works so we know what we're talking about here.
Sure. A lawsuit loan or third-party non-recourse litigation financing is a loan that you get in advance of your lawsuit. So if you have a lawsuit, you go to the lender and the lender provides you money, and then your collateral, more or less, is the payoff that you may eventually get. Now, our problem with this process is that right now, New York State characterizes it as an investment, not a loan. And so these loans, as we like to call them, though they like to call them investments, are not subject to any consumer protections. So interest rate caps, which is something we advocate for, some sort of disclosures, all those sorts of things are not currently available to consumers. So as consumers look to these loans, they need to be very careful.
All right, well, let's back up for a second because how do the lending companies even find the particular litigants? Is it how does the advertising even work? Is it over the airwaves? Is it do they just scroll through the different courthouse lists of the people who may have lawsuits? How do you, in your experience, how do they even find the people who may necessarily need this money?
Sure. Well, they do it with traditional advertising, but one of the things we're seeing is the use of social media and specifically something called geofencing. And what that is they actually have a Facebook ad or a Twitter ad that's based in an emergency room, for example. So they take a little digital carve out and they just say, all right, if you're in an emergency room, we're going to send you a Twitter ad, a Facebook ad. And so that's one of the ways they solicit
And
customers.
once they get you or they decide that they may want you and lend you money, do they send the terms right to the particular individual? Do they find out who the lawyer is, send it to the lawyer? Is it a little both? How does it usually work?
I mean, my understanding is it's generally right with the consumer. And so oftentimes the lawyers are not involved. And as I think a lot of people on the plaintiff's side have discovered, they find out later that these agreements are in place and sometimes get in the way of the litigation down the road.
Now, what you were saying off camera a little bit is that you would think that the plaintiff's bar would be more concerned with this as well.
Absolutely.
Why would that? Why do you believe that?
Well, you now have a third party with an interest in actually protracting the litigation because they're collecting these astronomical interest rates. We've seen them at over 100%, and so they have an interest to protract the litigation. And worse, you also have a litigant, a client, who now may need more money because of how much they owe on the loan. So let's say you get for your client $100,000. They've taken out a $5,000 loan that's 100% interest year over year. 4 or 5 years later, that could be almost $100,000. Now you say to them, hey, I got you $100,000. This is a great deal. We should take it. And they know that their loan is going to cost them $100,000.
Well, let me ask you a question, because a lot of the people who are watching may say, well, look, I got into this accident. I have this injury. I lost my job, so I have no money.
Yeah.
And I need an operation. I don't have insurance. The doctor's not going to do my operation unless somehow I come up with some money. The only one who's giving me money is this funding company. How could
Right.
How do you resolve that, really?
Well, that's why we're advocating for simply interest rate caps on these loans. Let's treat these loans the same way we do other loans. And we've even given a little bit of leeway from what is the civil interest rate, usury rate it's called, cap, which is 16%, and we're advocating for a 25% interest cap.
What is the interest rate now, approximately?
Well, we've seen up to 150%. So consumers need to beware, because a lot of things we've seen too is we've seen contracts that talk about an interest rate and people think it's yearly, but it's monthly. So they're getting charged 18%, 25% monthly rather than yearly, and that ends up compounding to over 100%. So consumers need to be very careful. Now, we still think these loans should exist. I 100% agree with you. If somebody has the injury and they have medical costs, they need the money, they should have some sort of financial institution that they could rely on. But that institution shouldn't injure them a second time over with these astronomical interest rates.
Okay, so let's talk about bills or different means, because that's really how you can get these laws changed.
Yeah.
Are you being met with resistance up in Albany? Tell me what's going on up there.
Well, soon after we passed a bill unanimously through the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, the lenders themselves ended up hiring pretty much every lobbyist in Albany. They hired a lot of lobbyists who immediately started spreading money all over Albany to put into the politicians' pockets. Fortunately, with just the facts of the case, and the actual stories of, let's say, a 9/11 victim who tried to make a claim against the fund, ended up getting charged, had $18,000, they got loaned. 6 months later, they owed $33,000. Now, these lenders say, oh, there's all this risk, and that's why we need to charge these rates. This was a claim against the 9/11 trust. Yeah. There was no risk, and yet they charged approximately 100% for this loan.
Let me ask you, are any of these funding companies, and I'm not going to name them, but are any of the funding companies going out of business? Have you found that, or do they seem to all be the same players?
No,
because
no,
if some of them
they're
were
all
going
backed.
out of business, you might say, well, they're lending money and they're not getting back the return and they're dissolving, so maybe they should have that higher interest rate.
No, I
But
mean,
you're not seeing that at all.
If you're lending it over 100% and you can't do business, you're doing something really wrong. But these are all backed by hedge funds. They're backed by multi-billion-dollar interests. And then we've also seen, the New York Post did a story where there was a guy on Staten Island running something called the lawsuit cash truck. And he was literally throwing dollar bills out the window. And he said, if you got a lawsuit, I got you $10,000 bucks. But what he wasn't saying is that he also had a 100% interest rate.
Is there any license that you need to be able to loan these kinds of monies, or I mean?
Well, because it's an investment, so it is characterized as an investment.
I mean, does
so
the SEC make sure that you have some kind of license? I mean, there has to be some form of regulation, I would see. Maybe if it's not in the legal field, is there anybody regulating these companies at all?
Again, it is characterized as an investment,
But
so it is characterized under the SEC. But that's not meant to protect consumers. That's meant to basically keep the market stable. No, let's say you as an attorney were suing somebody and you needed a loan, you wouldn't sign a contract with a 100% interest rate. You know how to navigate, monthly rate versus yearly rate. You'd read that contract backward and forward. But for some consumers, that's not as available. It might not be even in their language. It's a lot tougher. And that's why we have consumer protections, and that's why we need to apply them to these loans.
When are we going to hear? When do you think we'll know whether or not they're going to act?
Hopefully by the end of June. So it passed the Senate unanimously 2 years ago. Last year it passed 60-1, and that again was Democrats and Republicans. Now we have a fully Democratic Senate, fully Democratic Assembly. So we hope we can get this done.
And you would
this year.
think, though, that plaintiffs' attorneys wouldn't have a problem with the lowering of the interest rate. They would just have a problem with being able to secure monies from these particular companies if they need it.
And one of the problems is that the law says that you cannot be a lawyer and also be the lender, because then you're in a conflict there.
That's true.
You can't do that, right? And that's an ethical law right now under the Bar Association, as we heard before. But unfortunately, it's not in the law. Right? It may be an ethical canon of the bar, but that doesn't mean it's in the law. And the problem is sometimes you have these law firms that are also running these lending rackets through a paper wall or through their cousin Vinny or what have you.
Always making trouble. I like it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the, I always give you a platform for some other things that you're pushing. Tell me some of the other things that are on the agenda.
Well, one of the big things that we're worried about is municipal liability. Right. So New York City spends more on litigation than the next 19 largest U.S. cities combined. It's a massive figure, and that's money that we should be spending on rebuilding the MTA, building new bridges, building new schools, those sorts of things. So the city continues to be a target for litigation, and we're hoping that one of the things they can do is start litigating these cases rather than settling them. So one of the things is when you settle all your cases, you become more of a target.
The only thing is litigation costs money. So
It does.
if you're asking the city of New York to litigate these cases, they're going to have to be paying for experts. They have to pay for their doctors. They have to pay possibly even overtime for attorneys who may be working on weekends or different things. How does that jive?
And that's an excellent point. So Chicago had a similar situation, and they started litigating their cases. And in year one, their costs went up. But by year two, their costs had gone down over 60% because people knew there wasn't just an easy settlement. You had to have a good case. And that's what we advocate for at the Lawsuit Reform Alliance. Good cases. We want people to access the justice system. We want people to sue if they're injured, but we want them to have a good case. We don't want these frivolous cases that are often clogging up the system.
Well, let me ask you a question. What have you seen in terms of appeals and verdicts of the city of New York? Are they being reversed? Are they being upheld? because that will make a difference also. I mean, if you're forcing the city of New York to go to trial on all these cases because obviously you're not having them offer any money, there will be verdicts, and then it will many times be verdicts against the city. What's happening to those verdicts in the appellate division? I think that's something that's really important.
Unfortunately, the Court of Appeals ruled in a case called Rodriguez versus the City of New York that summary judgment was going to be easier against defendants, and that's going to make it harder for the city, unfortunately. We did not put an amicus in that case, unfortunately. I kind of wish we had. It seemed like a small technical issue at the time, and it's one of those things.
That's not so technical. That's a big area of the law now that all plaintiffs are using, and defendants have to be aware of as well in terms of proving comparative negligence. So,
absolutely, and now it's going to be easier than it was because of the Rodriguez versus City of New York case.
Anything else coming up that we should know about? What else you have coming up?
Well, we're working on an expert witness disclosure study. So right now in New York, there is no general standards for the disclosure of experts, right? Different counties have different rules. Different judicial districts have different rules.
You mean in terms of the time when you have to serve, let's say the 3101D?
Exactly.
What you're saying? Okay.
The timing of your filing, the timing of when you're going to say your expert is coming. And the problem with that is that if you're a defendant and you find out that there's an expert, at trial, you don't have any way to cross.
You do understand that works both ways, though.
It does.
The defendant can
without
also
a doubt.
serve you with the 3101D.
Sure. It works both ways. But if you're a defendant or if you're a plaintiff and you don't know if the expert testifying against you works at the Mayo Clinic or works out of a van, that makes it very difficult to figure out to assess the case against you.
Did any bills go in on that particular?
We're working on getting a bill this year. We've had a bill to go in, and the Office of Court Administration has a bill. So our bill says at the note of issue, when you say you're ready for trial.
And what does OCA say?
And OCA says 90 days. Either way, if we have a consistent platform and everybody knows what the rules are in all the judicial districts, we're going to be happy.
Where do we find you? You know where everybody wants to find you.
Hey, who doesn't want to find me? It's at lrany.org. You can also find us at scaffoldlaw.org. You can find us at Twitter at Lawsuit Reform, Lawsuit Reform NY. Easy to find us, easy to find me.
You always bring a great debate here. I get the emails right after you leave. 5 minutes after, I'll be getting the emails.
Well, I look forward to it. Send them on to me.
You have a very happy holiday, and you're going to come back, right?
You too. I would love to, David. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check it out at www.bronxnet.tv. Also, remember, if there is a legal issue or a topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to contact me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org or tweet us at Today's Verdict, and make sure to hashtag Ask Today's Verdict. For myself and all of us here, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach a verdict. See you next time.